Hello everyone, this is Mr. Appel, and we're going to solve this system of equations algebraically. So most of the time with these kinds of systems, where in this case we have a linear equation and then a circle, because these guys are squared and these aren't, elimination is going to be kind of tricky. So I'm not even going to bother with that, but substitution should be fairly straightforward. So I'm going to take this equation here, and I'm going to add the 2y to both sides. So I'm going to get the x by itself. And now I'm going to substitute. I'm going to do a substitution. So I'm going to stick that 2y in place of x in the other equation. So that becomes 2y quantity squared plus the y squared equals 125. So now I'm going to go ahead and solve this. So this is 4y squared plus y squared equals 125. So that's 5y squared equals 125. And I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And I've got y squared equals 25. And now this is a quadratic. There's no y term in this one, and so you could solve this by square rooting both sides. So I'm going to square root both sides. If you do that, you've got to be really careful and remember that there's a plus or minus, that the solution is plus or minus 5. There's actually two answers. If you had solved this by, let me just move this up, by setting it equal to 0 and factoring, it's a little easier to see, because this is just a difference of squares. It's a little easier to see that your answers are -5 and +5. So now this is where these problems are a little different than what you're used to. Since -5 and +5 are our y values, we've got to plug them in to our original equation twice. So when y equals -5, we have x minus 2 times -5 equals 0. And so x plus 10 equals 0. And so x equals -10. But then, so that gives us -10, -5 is one of our solutions. But when y is +5, we have x minus 2 times 5 equals 0. And so x minus 10 equals 0. And so x equals 10. And so we get 10, +5. And so those are, in this case, our two solutions. Keeping in mind, we should always, and I probably should have done this at the beginning, anticipate how many possible solutions there are. So every time you do these, I want you thinking about what they look like on a graph. That's why we did all that graphing in the last playlist. So you should be looking at this first equation and saying, oh, that's a line. And this second equation is a circle. And so if you have a circle and then a line, there's three scenarios. You could have no solutions. You could have one solution where it just touches it once, or you could have two. Algebraically, what that's going to look like, well, if you've got two solutions like this, it's going to look like the problem we just did, right? Because we got two answers. One solution would happen if when we solved that quadratic, we got a double root, right? So if we solved that quadratic for y and we just got one answer twice, then we'd only get one solution. And then no solutions, what that would look like algebraically is if when we went to solve the quadratic, we got an imaginary, right? If we got imaginary solutions. So if we got a negative under the radical, so that would mean there were no real solutions to that equation, which would mean there were no solutions to the system. So that's all for now. Thanks.